Let's get corrupted. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Guys, it's great to be back. I was away for a week, so I know I missed a week last week, but that's okay. Back in store with hopefully a great episode for you guys. We have on a great guest tonight. I'm super excited. I'm gonna apologize about this straight off the rip. I got very, very sick when I got off my flight on what was that, Wednesday night. And yeah, I was pretty terrible on Friday and Saturday. I'm feeling better now, but my voice sounds terrible. I'm coughing, so if you hear me mute the mic and stuff, it's probably me coughing, but I can't fix my voice. This is what it is, and gonna have to get through it this episode. So that's all right though. I'm always here. I'm always going to do the podcast. Never would want to cancel out that. But yeah, hope you guys are all doing super well. I know we missed a week, obviously, but yeah, everything's going well over here. So yeah, let's get through this intro stuff, and then we could get over to our guest. But yeah, guys, make sure you hit the like on today's podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe on the channel. Hit that notification bell so you know every single time we do a Colubrid Corruption podcast or I drop a video or anything like that. I really appreciate it. Make sure you go listen to this podcast on all the major audio podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a couple others as well, like YouTube Music, things like that. Leave a 5-star review where you can. And yeah, share this out to your friends. I'd greatly appreciate it. And yeah, guys, right here down below, if you're looking at the screen, you could see where you can find me on social media. It's pretty much at Meteoric Serpents everywhere. So feel free to give me a follow on there. Say what's up. Tell me how you like the show and all that good stuff. Make sure you leave a comment on the podcast too. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. Always like seeing the feedback on the directly comments, on the episodes. Lets me know people are watching. And sometimes I'll get ones, like I just got one the other day from an episode from like months ago. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. People are still, listening to that episode. Like that's awesome. So yeah, super, super awesome. Yeah, guys, also make sure you support USARK Florida. Those are the organizations that fight for our rights to keep our reptiles, whether it's whether this is a business for you, whether it's just a hobby, no matter where you are in the United States, it could be, your legislation could be in danger next. So make sure you're protecting your animals' rights by supporting USARK and USARK Florida. First link in the description below goes to the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. I already see 2 of the Patreon members in the chats. I appreciate you guys so much. It's another way to, support me, say thanks for the show. And really, I just want to help build a cool Colubrid community of people who are interested in these animals. Plus, it helps me make this podcast bigger and better all the time. So that's what I hope to do with that. Now, let's see here. As you guys all know, as per usual, the Colubrid Corruption podcast is brought to you by the Show Me Reptiles show and the Show Me Marketplace. Guys, whether you're a vendor or a show attendee, go to the Show Me Reptiles website and find out where the nearest show is to you. They do shows all over the country. They're great shows, which includes Colubrid Fest, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. You could also go to the Show Me Reptiles site for the Show Me Marketplace, which is a new way for you to buy and sell your reptiles. And if you are a seller, you could use code corruption-50 to get 50% off your first year's membership on the Show Me Marketplace. Again, that is corruption-50 to get 50% off. So yeah, make sure you go use that. Let's see. And then, guys, I'm going to talk about it every week, but Colubrid Fest this year, 2025, is going to be September 12th to 14th at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum in Fort Wayne, Indiana. As as it's been talked about before, the 12th is kind of like the meet and greet hangout. The 13th, which is the Saturday, is going to be the panels, the speaker panels, and the auction at the end of the night, which was a lot of fun this past year. And like I've been talking about, it's just going to keep getting bigger and better. So definitely looking forward to that. And then the Sunday is the Colubrid only expo, which, judging by what vendors have already said they're coming this year, is just going to be a fantastic show. So I can't wait for that. Yeah, just super, super exciting. And now I am waiting for our guest. He said he was just running to grab a couple animals so he could show off during the show, which is no problem, but we do have to show you guys the hashtag Colubrid corruption of the week. Yeah, it was this one. I'm not sure who this person is, but they put hashtag Colubrid corruption. Shout out to Blotch Wild Photography. I gave you a follow because you put this on here. It's a cool little mock viper. Great shot. A subadult female. Yeah, just a really high quality shot. I thought this was cool. So that's your hashtag Colubrid corruption of the week. Guys, if you want to be featured on an episode, I do this once a week. I just put hashtag Colubrid corruption on your Colubrid photos, and I'll pick out one per week to kind of feature and give a little shout out to at the beginning of the episode. So yeah. All right. And let's say what's up in the chat real quick. We got Ed from the Patreon. What's going on, man? Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you being here. We got Adam from Ivory Colubrid Co. Appreciate you, another Patreon member. Thanks for being here. And we have Enter the Dragon's Lair. Haven't seen you here before, but thank you very much for watching. It's greatly appreciated. All right. Yeah, we're just waiting on Patrick to come back now. Guys, I hope you're stoked for this one, like I am. A bunch of different species that, one, either haven't been talked about much on the show or at all. And some others I'm very curious to learn about. We're going to be talking Boiga, the Black Jansenii, some Pituophis, which I haven't had a Pituophis episode in a very long time. And yeah, and some other stuff. Definitely talk about some chondros with Patrick with my very limited knowledge. But I think I watch enough chondro content to ask good questions. But yeah. What's up? I also see Krista and Emilio in the chat. What's up, V-Unit family? I could tell my voice is in rough shape. I'm hoping I could get through to the end of this episode with a voice still. All right. What's going on, everybody? How have you all been? Making sure he didn't text me. Okay. What's up? What's up? I know it's coming to that time of year where breeding season's kicking up. Some animals are coming out of brumation and whatnot, and pythons are breeding. I know I got one girl that's close to ovulation on the ball python side, and another that just has shed, but she's still pounding food, but she's huge. I assume she's going to go soon. Texas Rat's going to start pairing those soon as well. See what happens there. But yeah, going to be a super, super exciting year, and we'll see what happens. But yeah. All right. Oh, there he is. Perfect timing. What's up, man? How are you?
I am. I'm pretty good. Took me just as well. Colubrids don't always cooperate really easily with being stuffed into in the boxes, but wanted to do a little bit of show and tell. Actually, I wanted to bring over my my big Divergens male, but he is stuffed way deep into a cork tube, and he looks like he might be in shed, and
Gotcha.
he is a handful animal. He's like, I can't just reach in and snatch him out of the cage. I gotta, it takes some finesse with that guy.
Right. Right. No, I got you, man. And I'm sure this setting is a little bit different for you. I know everywhere I see you talk on podcasts, it's usually conjure related. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
this gets you to step out of that element a little bit into some of the other stuff.
for sure. I've done a couple of shows that were strictly about venomous with MJ, and I've done Stephen and I, Stephen Cush and myself, talked about colubrids a bit on one of the episodes I did with him. We touched on the mangroves and bull snakes a
Right.
little bit, but yeah, most of the time we were talking about chondros.
All right. Cool, man. Well, for those who don't know really who you are, any of my listeners, would you mind giving your kind of reptile background, how you got into it, and how that kind of brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I have basically had snakes my whole life. When the first one that I remember when I was really, I was probably like 2 or 3 years old, probably 2 years old when my dad got this snake. So my dad always had snakes when he was a kid. His parents were not about it, so he had to like keep stuff outside in the like in a separate building or hide it or whatever. Um, but he had a rough earth snake that he kept in a styrofoam cooler that had like really deep soil and two little dishes, and one of them two little glass dishes, and one of them was for water, and the other one he would put earthworms into it, and you just never saw the snake. It was a massive for a rough earth snake. This thing was like
Okay.
8 inches long or whatever, and he but you could drop earthworms in there, and if you would go open the lid at night, sometimes you'd catch that snake in there thrashing earthworms around and stuff. But we started. I caught the first two snakes I ever caught. I was 4 years old. It was a diamondback water snake and a Texas rat snake in Duck Creek in Garland. And I've kind of always been into rat snakes because Texas rat snakes are just super common around here.
Yeah.
And I will continue to call them Texas rat snakes until the taxonomists come to their senses and circle back around to calling them Texas rat snakes again.
Well,
And
I know you don't know me super well. I have my collection that's like my biggest thing. I have a bunch of
it's
Texas rats.
Texas
So
rats. I think I
yeah,
saw.
yeah,
I think I saw quite a bit of that on your Instagram, maybe.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and they'll you know change the scientific name or whatever. I'll probably still call them Lindheimeri too, but
Yeah.
that's um, and all the old school guys that I know, they still call them that. And if I catch an obsoletus in Texas, it's a Texas rat snake, and it always
Oh
will be.
yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
and the idea that the black rat snakes on one side of the river are different from the black rat snakes on the other side, but they're the same thing as Everglades rat snakes is just stupid to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
I'm not going to subscribe to that. Anyways, so yeah, we had a big boa constrictor when I was a kid. Got him when I was probably 5 years old, and um, most of my reptiles when I was younger were just things that I caught. Rough green snakes and garter snakes and Texas rat snakes. And the first snake that I ever actually paid money for was just a plain normal bull snake. And and then I also caught a couple of bull snakes in Oklahoma when I was 12 or so. So I've always been into the colubrids just because that's what I could go outside and find.
Right,
Um,
right.
And to this day, when I caught those two bull snakes in Oklahoma, that was still the best flip that I've ever had. It was a real early spring or late winter, so it's still warm days and chilly nights, and so the flipping 10 is great that time of year, and that metal gets warmed up. And I we had just got to my grandfather's house, and I didn't even like go in to say hi to my family or anything. I just ran straight out into the field like when we pulled up. And the very first piece that I flipped over, there were two 6-foot bull snakes, a 5-foot
Nice.
coach whip, and a 32-inch speckled king, and they were all coiled up together.
That's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, super awesome. Especially, it's cool too, considering that coach whips and speckled kings are snake eaters, and they're just all coiled up. And the coach whip, unsurprisingly, stood up on me and got all defensive, even though it was cold as shit. So I picked up the bull snakes and the king snake, and all my family is still at the front door hugging each other, and I'm dragging snakes back to the house. And I was like 11 or 12, and these bull snakes are full grown, so I'm holding them over the top of my head, and their tails are dragging the ground, and I literally out loud, I told that coach whip, I said, I'm coming back for you. And I went and I threw those snakes in buckets and ran back out there, and I caught that coach whip too. And,
nice.
And to be fair, if it was not still cold outside, that coach whip would have been a mile away by the time I ran back out there. But he was still there, and I got him too. And I gave him a little side note. I gave him to a friend of mine who had this massive fish tank, empty fish tank that took up like most of a wall in his bedroom. And he had that thing for years and years, dude. It just, because he just huge cage for it, and it just did great, man. He kept that thing for a very long time. But yeah, man. So started off with a bunch of wild caught stuff, and started getting into my first kind of niche thing was North American rat snakes. I just always been into rat snakes, and I traded the boa that we had forever, who had just gotten so huge, and we just didn't have like a proper enclosure for that thing. We kept him in a huge acrylic aquarium, and I ended up trading him for a handful of young captive bred rat snakes, a Deckert's rat, and a Gulf hammock rat, some kind of stuff that's kind of obscure to me in Texas. And a couple of, I think I got a pair of Florida Kings, a Gulf hammock rat, a Deckert's rat, and something else, a Glades rat or a yellow rat or something like that. But after that, I'd probably lose track trying to tell you all the stuff that I started picking up after that. But some of the highlights were around in probably 95. Yeah, probably not. It was, summer of 95. I hatched out my first clutch of snakes, and those were Emery's rat snakes.
Okay.
And I had a critter keeper with perlite and water.
Yep.
And I had this dude told me, he said, put 9 inches of perlite in there and make a mark at the bottom of the cage at 2 inches and 3 inches. And he said, fill it up with water to 3 inches. And if it gets down to the 2-inch mark, fill it back up to the 3-inch mark. And that would diffuse the moisture evenly to be the right level on top for the eggs. And I hung a heat light over the critter keeper, and I put an aquarium, like a little metal aquarium thermometer, in the box with the eggs, and I adjusted the height of the heat light to get the temperature where I wanted it to incubate those eggs. And I got 100% hatch, all 11 of them hatched out. And I will, for the rest of my life, I will never forget walking into my bedroom and seeing little snake noses peeking out of the eggs in there. It changed my whole fucking life, man. And to this day, I mean, I've hatched 35 clutches of green tree pythons at this point, and all kinds of other stuff. And every single time, it doesn't matter if it's corn snakes, it doesn't matter what it is. It's always really badass.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I started getting into arboreals around that time. I got my first Amazon tree boas from Tom Crutchfield in '95, and then in '97, maybe '97 or '98, I was working at a pet store, and we had started building a bigger reptile room and getting more exotic shit in. And back then, we just basically ordered a bunch of cool stuff and killed most of it, trying to figure out how to keep it alive. You know, it was all trial by fire and no internet back then.
Right.
And lost a lot of red-tailed green rats and stuff like that, trying to figure that out. But we had a captive bred adult female beauty snake come in, and I bought her. I took her home, and I remember being super nervous trying to save up enough cash to buy her for like, $65 or whatever it was. It was a lot of money for me to save up, and I was just so nervous that somebody else was going to walk in there and buy her. But I ended up taking her home, and that kind of started killing a bunch of Gonyosoma and bringing home that beauty snake. This Taiwan beauty, the OG. Bringing her home and having all those Ganyos up there, that kind of set me off on the path of like larger Colubrids and Asian rat snakes. And back then, everything was a laffy. The whole
right.
Everything. European rats, everything, all the rats, even the Ganyos and stuff. People call them like everything.
Yeah,
was
I think everything besides Pituophis, right, was
that was probably probably the only thing with rat snake as the common name that was not a laffy. And that's some taxonomic changes I can get on board with, because obviously these are all very 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 different animals. Yeah. And I kept all that stuff. I had the Diones and Situla, some of the smaller European and Eurasian stuff. I've kept some of the Porphyrosaea complex and the all kind, most of the beauty snakes. There's some beauties that are in the hobby now, thanks to Dan Malary and some other people that are that I never kept back then. But I had Ridley Eye with the blue beauties and Yunnaninsis and the Taiwans, and I feel like I'm forgetting one as well. But yeah, just basically anything cool and different that I could get my hands on. Probably started keeping Spilotes around like early 2000s, something like that. And all of those things just had a huge impact on me. The big active Colubrids that was just where it was at for me. And I also, 98 is when I started keeping chondros. 2006 is when I started, I've consistently had chondros since 2006. And around that time, 06, 07, I have consistently kept mangrove snakes and chondros and scrubs, few things that have been kind of mainstays for me. But the mangroves kind of became, I didn't have a lot of them, but they became a pretty serious focus for me around that time, around 2007, 2008, something like that. So, so that's all kind of background stuff. And then it has, over the last 7 years or so, when I started really getting back into reptiles, it has just turned into, I don't even know how to describe what I have going on over here now.
Now I know you have a lot, and I feel like it's more than you even show on social media. Just like if I start to really like, if you really go through your pictures and start looking at all the species, you're kind of like, oh, okay, he has a lot more than, it looks like he has.
Yeah, and if you were to like just start randomly visiting Facebook groups and just putting my name in the search, you just find all kinds of shit. Because I just will occasionally post in the Pituophis group or the Boiga group or one of the venomous groups or whatever. I haven't counted in a while, but I think I have about 400 snakes over here right now.
Okay.
I have way over 100 green trees. I have a lot of different colubrids. I've got probably 20 or so adult mangrove snakes of 3 different types. I have, I think, 27 species of vipers right now, and so a lot of venomous stuff. Um, and then lots of other boas and pythons too. I have Amazon tree boas and emeralds and basins and Dominican and Jamaican boas and scrub pythons and Brettles pythons and diamonds pythons and Moluccan pythons, a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff over here.
Yeah.
So.
All right, cool, man. Well, tonight's mostly about the colubrids, but I do want to talk about some of the other stuff after. But
sure.
Good jumping point with the Boiga. It's actually a group of animals I have not talked about yet on the podcast. I just haven't had a Boiga guest quite yet.
Well, I'm wearing my Boiga shirt.
I did see that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, my little brother got this for me from Cloud Forest Designs, and I thought it was super cool shirt.
Very nice.
That's very geeky. It's my snake nerd shirt.
Yeah. What was the inspiration for what got you into those guys? Because they are kind of obscure. You really don't see them a whole lot. You had mentioned you were keeping some of the other like Asian rat snake species, but then where did you see Boiga that you were like, oh, okay, that's an interesting one, especially with them being rear fanged and all that other stuff?
Yeah, so I don't specifically remember the first time that I saw one in person or the first time that I saw one in a book, but pictures of either melanota or just dendrophila were common in a lot of like broad spectrum snake books and stuff. So I had been seeing pictures of them for a long time, and I don't care who you are or what you're into. The black and yellow contrast on just a classic mangrove snake, it's just a strikingly beautiful thing. It's a shocking appearance. And if you see a big one and you see one stand up and gape in the defensive, posturing that they do, it's just one of the most impressive things. There's just seeing a 7 or 8 foot melanota standing up on you with its mouth open is just like there's just not a lot that's cooler than that, man. That's that defensive posture and that contrast has always been a thing for me. And like I said, I got my first ones in probably 07, 08 wild caught stuff. Did way better with melanota than I did with dendrophila. And most of what I had was melanota. They're just melanota is way easier to acclimate. They're way more likely to eat for you and just way less stressy and finicky. Melanota are just a big tough snake, and if you get them well hydrated and reduce their stress immediately after coming in, and then potentially consider some parasite screening and treatment, they just tend to acclimate pretty well. And shortly thereafter, I found out that Jimmy Cincta was a thing. Jimmy Cincta are the Sulawesi blacks. And I mean, if we're going to do some show and tell and we're talking about mangroves, I could just be pulling these things out while we're
go for it. I was
here
about to pull
talking
out
about it.
your Instagram, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, you can do that as well. Let's see. So I don't have any like standard melanota. I have all three that I have right now are kind of aberrant to one degree or another, and I'll probably end up bleeding here at some point. But because these two little females that I have are super feisty. But yeah, well, maybe she'll just sit here on this perch and be good. So that is melanota. This one is an import. I have all three of my melanota came from Dan Malaria at DM Exotics, but he produced one of my females at his Malaysia facility, and then this one and my big male are wild caughts.
Gotcha.
The captive bred one is actually the most defensive of the group, which is kind of funny. And they tend to be mangrove snakes, just generally speaking. They don't really have like a gray area with their temperament. They kind of just have an on-off switch, and so they are either like corn snake calm, or you flip a switch. She just started gaping on me, but you flip a switch and they just start freaking out.
Right.
So this girl, you see her bands don't go all the way up to sides. So just reduced patterning. And somebody in one of the mangrove groups said that I shouldn't be calling that aberrant because it's a natural variation, but I'm not claiming it to be, although it is a totally reproducible trait, I'm not claiming it to be like a morph or whatever. Aberrant just means not the normal color. And this is not the normal pattern. And so I completely disagree. But this is definitely aberrant because she's not just fully and normally banded. Her upper body kind of looks fairly normal, and then as you go down, she gets really reduced.
Right.
She is not happy. And these guys, they are venomous. Some people recommend using equipment with them. With my bigger ones, I generally am pulling them out with a hook. But you know, as with anything, reactions can vary. But I've seen people have horrible reactions to garter snakes and hognose snakes too.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, you can't let them chew on you. Like they're rear fanged, man. The venom is super mild, and a defensive strike, a bite and let go from a mangrove snake is not likely to get any significant amount of venom into you. And I've been bitten hundreds of times by mangrove snakes, mostly babies, but I've been bitten by large adults of 4 different types, and I've had zero reaction ever. I've never had a reaction. That being said, I've also never let one chew on me before, not of any size or age. They strike defensively, they let go. I've never let one chew on me.
Right.
But so yeah, this is the look that everybody sees, is that classic black and yellow, and it doesn't really pick up in here, but they're super iridescent, like just really, really, really iridescent. And then, so then I found out that that Jimmy Cincta was a thing. I got my first captive bred melanota around the first time that I got my first captive bred Jimmy Cincta. And from my buddy Doug, he was breeding melanota back then. And they were fairly cheap. I think I paid like 80 or 90 bucks for my first one. And I think I paid like 100 or 110 for a holdback from him later. And then when I was buying my first captive bred melanota, I was at Doug's table at the Venomous show in San Antonio, and Randall Berry came walking up with a pair of wild caught Jimmy Cincta like this. These are the Sulawesi blacks. And he had just bought them from Glades Hurt. And I didn't think he was even going to keep them alive. I had kind of looked at the pair too. One of them was looking a little rough, and they looked a little small to me. But then the next time that I talked to Randy, which was like at the show, the next venomous show, 6 months later, he was incubating eggs. And I was like, oh shit. And he ended up selling me, man, I'm actually just noticing. So this animal is ultra black. I bought 2 pairs from Dan Malary that are super, super black. But this is my first time. I just got them a few months ago, September, I think.
Okay.
And so I kind of just leave them alone. I don't really get them out. I'm actually noticing that even though this animal is really, really black, at just the right angle, I can see where his bands were at. They still haven't completely disappeared. The 2 biggest ones of that group that I got, which have been breeding for me, there is no trace of any patterning left. So these guys hatch out as the most colorful mangrove snakes.
Oh, really?
Yes, they are insanely colorful as babies. I'm not sure maybe on my person, one of my Instagrams way down at the bottom, I think there's a picture of a baby Jimmy Cincta, but their bands start yellow and then they turn orange and then they turn red.
I'm gonna try to scroll. I'm gonna try to scroll a bit.
Yeah, I think there's a picture of a neonate sitting on a piece of cork bark at the very bottom of one of my 2 Instagrams, but I can't remember. But yeah, they're born super colorful and then they just lose their color and start changing. Actually, I've got a juvenile that Dan produced at the Malaysia facility. That's in the middle of the change right now. She's kind of in the ugly duckling phase. And so it was funny connection that while I was buying my first captive bred Melanota, see, she's still banded, and
Yep.
but the bands are starting to get dingy and fade out. These things they hatch out just like brilliantly colored little jewels. Yeah, I just like I say, thought it was funny that Randall came up with that wild caught pair while I was buying my first captive bred Melanota, and then not too long later that same year, I was buying my first captive bred Jimmy Cincta that he produced from that pair, and he sold them to me super cheap. 2 of them were feeding, 1 of them wasn't. He gave me all 3 of them for like $270 or something like that. It was under $300 for all 3 of them, which they go for. These days, I've seen captive bred Jimmy Cincta anywhere from $450 to $750, and I've seen Melanota in that range as well. Yeah, so that kind of started and the captive bred ones were just such a breeze too, man. Just no issues. So that kind of started me really thinking about breeding them myself, and let's see. And
yeah, speaking of that, not to cut you off, but
go ahead.
I wanted to know, what have you seen? Like, what kind of differences have you seen comparing wild caught stuff versus even your own captive bred? Whether it's feeding, just general behavior and attitude, and all that stuff. What have you seen, like, trends between the 2?
With the Boiga specifically?
Yes.
Yeah. With temperament, not at all. Which is interesting. A lot of animals, the wild caught, tend to be more nervous and more defensive. But with the Boiga, I have not. Man, it's hard to say because I haven't tracked data on it. And at this point, I've seen so many captive bred animals that I may just be biased with this. But captive bred Boiga, in my experience, are at least as defensive as the wild caught ones. They there tends to be slight variability from type to type. Some of them have species status, like Melanota has species status now. Melanota tend to be fairly calm, but fairly easy to set off, and their switch flips really fast. And of all of them, they have the least gray area. They're very calm, or they're like total shit show. But when they strike, mangrove snakes strike very quickly and very accurately when they want to. Melanota have a very strong tendency towards not hitting the target. They will strike over your hand or under your hand. And it's very clear that it's intentional, that it's a get away from me strike, and they're not
Gotcha.
trying to hit you. Whereas divergens are on the fucking mark very intentionally every single, like, the divergens are very consistently the most defensive mangrove snakes. Like, it's very, very consistent, and they're quite variable. As individuals, I have one in particular, my het axanthic male, that's just really, really bad most of the time. But as they get older, they tend to be harder to set off. And I don't really like play with any of them. They're usually in their cork tubes when I'm doing maintenance. The juveniles don't have cork tubes, so I get lit up by the small ones all the time when I'm doing maintenance with them. But they, the on the subject of variability between the types, the Gemicincta tend to be the calmest ones and the hardest to set off, in my experience. And that experience, we'll still call that anecdotal, but at this point, I've had, dozens of Melanota, dozens of Divergens, and I probably had dozens, or at least like pushing a couple dozen Gemicincta over the years. So
Nice.
I have 8 Gemicincta right now, and 8, that's one juvenile and one subadult and half a dozen adults. And I have 8 adult Divergens and one subadult and one juvenile holdback. Those 2 are both holdbacks, and then the three Melanota. But yeah, as far as so behaviorally, I don't really notice a whole lot of difference between the wild caught and the captive bred. As far as feeding goes, honestly, I haven't seen a huge difference either with the wild caught. Once they start eating, they tend to have be more likely to take mice than rats. I've also interestingly noticed in all types, not consistent, but a general aversion to African softbird rats, which is strange because they're like snake crack for so many other things. There's so many other species that, like, you can use ASF to get them feeding. I've noticed an aversion to ASF between all 3 of those types. But sometimes they eat them, sometimes they don't. Always strange to me because in the wild, these things eat literally anything. They eat everything. They eat snakes, they eat lizards, they eat all types of mammals, they eat birds. They will drop into the water and catch fish and crustaceans, and they literally eat everything, including each other. They have a strong tendency towards cannibalism.
Yeah, I've seen herping videos of them like swimming in bodies of water. So yeah, the fish one doesn't surprise me.
They are strong swimmers, and defensively they will drop down into the water and go down to the bottom, just like a Nerodia or other water snake species will. They also have some fossorial tendencies when they're juveniles, which is very interesting. So you see a snake that we call arboreal be very much semi-aquatic in their capability. Can't say how much they behave like that in the wild, like how often they're in the water. Very much semi-aquatic in their capability. But I noticed raising up Gemicincta keeping them on sphagnum moss, that they would dig tunnels through the sphagnum, and they knew where, and it wasn't just from them like rooting around in there. They made tunnels in the sphagnum. I kept them in big critter keepers, and I could pick them up and look at the tunnels.
Right.
And when you, I, I kept them in like, they were like planted, just deep sphagnum moss, pothos or philodendron, big water bowl, and some fake plastic vines. I normally only do natural stuff, but back then I had these fake plastic vines that I got really cheap. They're like a Zoom Ed product, and they worked really well in that setting. And you couldn't really tell they were fake in there with the ivy and whatnot. But these things would perch up, and then when you'd walk in, they would drop into the water bowl and drop down to the bottom and just hide, or they would dive off into one of those tunnels and disappear under the moss. And if you changed out the cage or just shook up the moss, they would just dig them again and put them back. So it was really interesting to see semi-fossorial behavior from an arboreal slash aquatic snake. And that was also kind of formative for me. It was super intriguing, that type of behavior. And while I still haven't ever gotten to this point, eventually I want to build just a massive paludarium that has live mangrove trees in it, and like brackish water and fish and everything, and just have maybe just one. It's kind of, cohabbing is kind of sketchy with mangrove snakes. Maybe just one giant melanota male in there or something like that. So,
yeah, that'd be cool.
But yeah, one quick more note on the thing, like the captive bred versus wild caught. The only major differences that I've noticed between them behaviorally, to any degree, is just the acclimation, and that's everything. Once they're acclimated, they kind of all seem to be the same. When I was over there grabbing some stuff out of the snake house to bring over here, my one of my wild caught melanota or Jimmy Cincta females was up and out and in the open and perched, and she's developing egg follicles right now. So that could be basking behavior, or she's on ambient temperatures. I haven't moved her to I acclimate everything in tubs. Everything that comes in is going into a sterile enclosure, and then she's graduated from from quarantine, so she's on cypress mulch with leaf litter, and has cork tube and bamboo perches, but she hasn't graduated to a cage yet, because they just acclimate. Nervous colubrids acclimate better in dark tubs. They just do.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says about tubs. People who criticize tubs as a generalization are at best misinformed. At absolute best misinformed. There is something to be said, in my opinion, for like keeping adult ball pythons in opaque tubs that are this wide, where like there's enough room for the snake in the water bowl or whatever. Like a critique of that is much more understandable than just critiquing tubs in general. But I rate, this is one corner of the baby room behind me. I raise everything in tubs, and I acclimate everything in tubs, and I quarantine everything in tubs. And the Gonyos, I'm going to start experimenting with pulling my Jansen eye out and putting them in enclosures and seeing how they behave. But the person that I used to know that was the most successful person ever in the U.S. with Gonyosoma, he never pulled his wild caught out of tubs. He kept them in like CB70 or similar tubs. Yep. And it's the only way to acclimate them, man. Like maybe if you stuff them into like a massive, heavily planted enclosure right off the bat and just let them disappear into the jungle. I know Brittany Williams at Ivory Exotics, she has had success acclimating nervous wild-caught colubrids in that manner. But for me, I've got so many animals that in order to even leave my quarantine space, they had to have spent a great deal of time in my warehouse at my shop and be screened for, I got to make sure they don't have mites and all this stuff. And you
Right.
can't do that dumping them into a bioactive enclosure. So everything is paper and plastic, paper towels,
Yeah.
puppy pads, tubs to start off. But the container doesn't matter if the parameters are okay. I have lots of tubs that are semi bioactive. They've got springtails like crazy in there, and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
mulch and leaf litter and branches, and the snakes love it. Some of my viper species, it seems to be the best way to keep them because they are terrestrial vipers that live at the base of trees their whole life in the dark forest, and when they can see me, they have put them in a vision cage or whatever, and they can see me, they stress the fuck out about it. I stuff them in a
Right.
big, deep tub where they can go all the way to the back of the tub and feel comfortable sitting in the leaf litter, and they they just chill and enjoy it. Um, with the big nervous colubrids and big active colubrids, if they if if they get, I have actually never experienced like rubbing issues, acclimating them in tubs, but stuff like I don't know, spilotes and things like that. Eventually, they do need to move out into a bigger enclosure, or or they will start. It'll start causing them issues. I've seen skin issues and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
this varies a lot, species to species, and even though Freight told me that that he always just kept all of his wild caught gonios in tubs and never let them out. I think I want to start experimenting with putting. I've had my Jansen eye for one of them for about a little over a year, and the other pair for about a year and a half. Um, and they're doing fantastic in
That's awesome.
CB70s. I mean, they're thriving in CB70s. But I want to see them. I want to watch them move around and stuff. So I want to start playing with putting them in vision cages or something. See how they do.
Yeah, and this is a good transition point, and that was the next snake I wanted to talk about. Jared, who was a guest on the show, Jared's Snake Room, he works a
Mm-hmm.
lot with the oxycephalum. He just put out a really nice guide on his Instagram page about how to like get in and acclimate your new oxycephalum, whether it's wild caught
Yeah,
or captive bred. I don't know if you saw that or if you follow him, but it
I
was really informative.
I do need to take a look at that. I feel like I saw something about him working on that, and I
He
believe
just
they
posted it
also.
like a day or two ago, or a
Oh,
couple
really?
days
Okay.
ago.
They I also want to say that in the Ganyo group that somebody archived Freight's old care sheet for them and put it up on a website, or maybe they even took over Freight's old website. That might have been what it was, that they took over Freight's old website and like kind of republished everything. So this may be something different that I'm thinking of. Really quick before we start talking about the Ganyos, if while we're still on the mangrove subject,
Yeah, yeah.
um, these are the ones that are my favorite, are the Divergens.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
hard to call them my favorite because I really love all of them. And the Melanota are kind of where my heart is at because they were like my first kind of big thing. But this is a holdback female Divergens that I hatched out last year. And she is from a pair that I raised up. We got from Ashley. She brought them in from Russia, from Tula Zoo. We got a big group in 2020, and I raised them up. And I sold a pair to Dan and kept the rest of them. All right.
Nice.
And so the first clutches that I produced were from my original adult pair that but this little girl right here is from one of the pairs that I raised up. I finally got them big enough and got them breeding. So um, the blue and yellow combo and that contrast to me
Right.
is just unreal. I was the second person in the United States to produce Divergens. Kevin McCurley at Nerd was the first person. He did it in 2019, and um, probably could have kept doing it if he didn't have a propensity for feeding males to his females. He's got this kind of all star female um, that is massive, and I have taken to getting my males bigger than my
Okay.
females, and doing like Dan does, which is waiting until they're developing follicles to pair them up. And I've had a couple of one or two cannibalization attempts with my het axanthic pair. I have a pair of divergents that are het for axanthic, and the male, they were both finicky. Out of that group, all of them took off except for those two. So they're the same age, but much smaller than all my other 2020s. And the male was particularly finicky, and he's still smaller than the female, but not by much. But I've pulled him out of her mouth twice. Um,
Yikes.
and but one of the times I just kind of wanted to see how they would act, and because she didn't seem to be developing. The other time she did seem to be developing, um, and it was when I walked in on him. It's kind of funny because this happened in the same night. I have a guy that helps me out with my collection sometimes, and he sent me a picture of these one of my bigger pairs, actually repeat pairing of this little one, and they're locked up. And I was busy in the middle of something, and I was like, "Oh, cool, they're locked up." But then I something just didn't seem right, and I went and checked the picture again, and I blew it up, and I could see the male's got the
Oh,
female like half of her head in his mouth. But the thing is, they do that when they breed. Bull snakes do it. A lot of
yep.
snakes, so the colubrids, the males will grab the female by the neck. And I don't think he was trying to eat her at all. And Zach said that he could like they were definitely locked up. Like their hemipines swell up huge. There's a when they're locked up, the female has this massive bulge at her tail base,
Okay.
and so they were definitely locked up, and I think that he was just holding her down, and it just so happened that he had half of her head in his mouth. But then when I got home that same night, I walk in and the het axanthic pair looks the exact same. Their tails are all wrapped up, but I realize it's the female that has the male, and
Ah,
I'm like,
shit.
and and I think they had been breeding because the way their tails were wrapped up. And so but they weren't locked up. So I went ahead and separated them, and she's in shed right now. So I'm hoping she may drop a clutch for me here. Last time she laid there, I didn't get anything fertile from her, but, yeah. Oh, and so last thing before we get to the Jansen, uh, this is, since I can't bring over my big guy, this was my favorite one and the only one that I ended up keeping from my first clutch in 2022. November of 22 is when I had my hatched out my first ones. That was the second clutch I had, but the first one there was only two fertile eggs and I only got one to go close to the distance and it was like
Ah,
deformed. So
oh, wow.
this girl is just ridiculous. She is
Yeah.
extremely blue and very pale blue, and the females tend to kind of muddy up. And like I have one female that has almost zero yellow bands on her side; they've just completely disappeared, and she's just kind of dark denim blue. This girl
Wow.
has maintained her contrast pretty well, and they're very sexually dimorphic, but it's not 100% consistent. Every once in a blue moon, you'll see a washed out male, and the washed out males are even less common than high contrast adult females. You'll occasionally see Kevin has one female that stayed high contrast. Hunter Dominguez has an insanely beautiful female. This girl so far has not muddied up, but it tends to happen as they mature. And
Yeah, it seems
they
insane.
she is insane, and she's being pretty well behaved. Her dad is blue like this, but her yellow bands are the widest of any of them that I've had or produced. She just has really, really wide yellow, and so that contrast is cool. And I'm trying to isolate some of these different traits over time. I want to selectively breed for really high blue for females that keep their contrast. And these wide bands are just, I mean, it's just too cool, dude.
Yeah.
Her dad is over 7 feet long. He is the heaviest one that I have. I have a Gymnosinca male that's probably longer than he is, but he's a very slender animal. Yeah, these are my kind of the pinnacle over here. They're among a couple of animals that I think are just, I don't, I, I can't say that there's like a certain, like a specific animal that's the prettiest snake in the world. To me, they don't get cooler than this. Like there's a few that are tied, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I don't think you can tell me that there's a snake that's more impressive than a really high color divergence like this. Maybe
Yeah.
snakes that
Yeah.
are as impressive, but not. It's hard to beat this. And when you see, I've got. Well, I mean, when you put the thumbnail, uh, on the link for the video, but you see that big 7 foot long male
Right.
divergence, and he's still just so blue, and it everybody who's ever laid eyes on that animal is just completely blown away by it, and I'm blown away by him every time he decides to come out of the cork, um,
Oh, I'm
or
sure.
on the rare occasion that I get him out. I drag him out maybe twice a year or something like that, and he doesn't like me. Um, so yeah, anyways, that's that. I always got to touch on the diversions. That's kind of become my thing, I guess,
Right.
over the last few years. And my I ended up with I had this adult male that he was the first one I ever saw. I didn't even know they existed. And Jordan Russell brought him in to California from Tula Zoo. And I saw him on Instagram, and he had a pair, and they were $3,500. And this is 2017, and I did not have the money. And one of my friends bought the pair, and he accidentally killed the female. Really
Oh,
kind of,
shoot.
yeah, it was a rough thing, man. I felt really bad. It was total freak accident, man. And I felt really bad, but he traded me the male for a green tree python, and I got him about 30 inches long and raised him up from there. And so my male that I have is the first divergence that I ever saw. Like I didn't even know they
Ah,
existed until I saw a picture of him. And so it's kind of like you know, a meant to be type of thing for me that I ended up with that animal and was the second person to produce him. And to this day, only 3 people in the U.S. that I know of have done it. Dan got a clutch from the pair that I sold him, and that's it.
okay.
And I've hatched out a few clutches of them. So, um, but yeah, on the Gonyosoma, eventually I will get oxys again. I love oxycephalum. Every time Dan has babies for sale, I come real fucking close to picking up a pair. I don't have any desire to acclimate wild caught oxys.
Right.
And the captive bred ones are cheap enough that like you'll probably spend less money on captive bred ones to end up with a living pair than you will
Oh,
like
yeah.
burn into wild caught ones. Um, but the Jansen are marginally easier to acclimate. So early last year, I'm sorry, early 2023, I saw a picture of a black Jansen on Indogram in Indonesia on a supplier's Instagram page, and he's holding it in his hand like this. And, this is solid jet black, shiny Jansen And I'm like, oh my God, like I have to have one of those. And not too long later, somebody offered me a pair for $4,000, and I'm like, dude, I'm not paying $4,000 for a pair of like wild caught Asian colubrids. I
Right.
don't care
Right.
what they are. And so a short time after that, Ashley offered us a pair for a whole lot less than that, and we got them. And that's actually, this is a female from Ashley, and that pair is just absolutely thriving. I wish she would start developing some follicles. I had the male in with her, just separated them actually again today. So far, I haven't been able to get her to develop any egg follicles, and I'm wondering if moving her into a bigger enclosure with basking sites and stuff will help. Maybe if it's temperature related thing, because with the exception of this room here, the baby room, everything I keep is on ambient. And then I offer basking spots for females that are already gravid. But I've started experimenting with putting small basking lights on my mangrove snakes all the time because I think I just need to. I think I'd get better production out of them if I bumped the daytime temperatures for the females and gave them a little more of an option and gradient. And they
Right.
definitely can use the basking when they're gravid. Um, but for right now, these guys are just in CB70s with mulch and leaf litter, and they smash frozen thawed mice and rats. I treated them with Panicure. I shortly after I got these, I got a pair from Bushmaster. It was like Cameron's last shipment before he closed the company down, and I paid $550 for the pair.
Really.
But I failed to acclimate the female. Um, I thought she had a respiratory infection, but what I later found out is that it was much more likely that it was parasites that had moved into her lungs and were giving her symptoms that seemed like an RI. And Freight was always really big on just hammering everything that came in with Panicure and Flagyl, and he would hit them with antibiotics. He would do Fortaz and Baytril. I am I do not shotgun antibiotics
Right.
to animals that are not sick. I completely disagree with that. And most reptiles, if you acclimate them properly, can eliminate or live with the parasite loads that they come in with. Gonyosoma seem to be an exception to that. They need to be, in my opinion, they need to be screened and treated for internal parasites if you're going to keep them alive. This girl has grown a lot. She actually escaped when I had her in quarantine, and I found her in the rafters of the warehouse. I had to climb up into the ceiling and pull her down.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
yeah, she is just she's it's probably six, maybe a little over 6 feet long. See, she's got her throat
Okay.
puffed up in the defensive way
Yeah.
that they do, and
Now, no one's ever bred the black ones yet, have they?
yes, but not. I can't remember if Freight ever did it back in the day, but maybe not in the States. But I've seen pictures of neonates,
Oh,
and I had
really?
mistakenly calling them. I had mistakenly called them melanistic, and that's not um, the proper term because they hatch out green. So it's not
Oh, they do.
yeah. So it's just like the black mangrove snakes. It's just a color phase. Um,
Interesting.
they, they they hatch out looking normal and then turn into this. But as I love Gonyosoma, and the Janseni and Oxys structurally they're pretty much identical. It's just very very different, very very different in color.
Right.
And to have one that's just solid jet black like this, it kind of makes it not anything. Like it doesn't, you probably couldn't tell if you didn't know that these were Janseni. Like it'd
Right.
be hard to
Right.
tell what they are. And so while I actually like Oxys a little better than Janseni, this black is just it's just way too cool, man. Um, these guys can be a little flighty and defensive, but they're not too bad. And as long as you kind of know how to
I mean, she
act
looks like
around
she's
them.
chilling with you.
Yeah, she's still puffing up her throat, and she's gaped at me a couple of times. But you know, I'm moving slow with her, and I'm not trying to force her into doing
Right.
anything. She's hissing and puffing and all the stuff. But and I have gotten, I can't remember if she got me, but I've been tagged a couple times by them and had them strike at me a few times. But they're fairly calm. They definitely don't like being messed with, though. They like, whereas the mangrove snakes, sometimes you pull them out and they're just totally chill. These guys always show some level of aversion to being pulled
Right.
out of the enclosure. Usually they're just kind of shying away, but sometimes they'll stand up and puff up and get really defensive. I'll see if I can step back and show you how big this animal really is. I mean, she's easy. I mean, easy 6 feet long.
Okay.
Probably she's probably more. Yeah, she's probably over 6 feet.
Nice.
And they get bigger than this. I mean, oxys too. They can get really big. All the mangrove snakes can get really big. Um, I have seen melanota. They have a melanota. I don't know if they still have it, but there was one at Dallas Zoo that looked like it was 9 feet long. I mean, it was
Oh wow.
absolutely massive. Um, try to get her back in here. She's not real happy about
And
that.
now, are you attempting to breed those guys like coming up?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I say, I just wish she would haven't been able to get her to develop any follicles. And I have an extra male because that female died. The other male is doing great, and I sold him to a local friend of mine. And then that friend of mine said that he just needed to downsize and couldn't take him, and asked if I could sell him for him. So I have an extra black male right now. If anybody's looking for a black Jansen, I've got a male that I've had for a year, and he is flawless. Um, but yeah, that pair, and you know, I wish I had more than one pair, but they were just they kind of came in. A bunch of them came in. I was supposed to get a pair from Dan, but Dan is well, he has more integrity than just about any of these other importers, and he had a feeling that they weren't acclimating as well as he wanted them to. And
Right.
I was already like trying to send him money, and he said, "Hey, let's hold off on the Jansen eye." He said, I don't know. He just kind of made a little side comment about it, and he was like, "Let's just hold off on those." And so I got some different things from him, and later on, he was like, "Yeah, none of those. They all died. Like
Oh
just
shit.
one by one, all died." So he just kind of saw it. Like he at the time when he said so, he just had a bad feeling. He wasn't losing any of them. They weren't even really like. And but you know, Dan has a ton of experience. He's been doing this shit for decades, like I have, and you can just
Yeah.
tell that an animal is off. You got some of these motherfuckers that will ship a dead snake to you, like literally. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Dan is the exact opposite of that. Anybody thinking about doing business with Dan Malari, I recommend him 10 out of 10 all day long. That I like. If you just if you want to do business with him, don't beat around the bush. Just watch his videos and watch his website and see what's coming up. And when you're ready to pull the trigger, contact him and buy a snake. He gets a lot of people who are like flaky and reserve stuff and don't come through or whatever. And he does not like it. With me, if I message him and say, "Hey, I want that," it's mine. He doesn't ask me when I'm going to pay for it because he knows that I'm going to send him the money for that snake.
But it seems like you've had a good relationship with him over the years, right?
Yeah, but I've known Dan for quite a while, but and had I sold him snakes before I ever bought anything from him,
Oh,
and
okay.
I would I would ask him about stuff and not buy, but I would never say, "Hey, I want to buy that snake," and then not buy the snake. I would just ask particular questions, and he just knows that I'm picky about the collection that I'm curating. And so I was never overbearing with questions. I might probe about something. Hey, how much are you asking for this or that? And never went any further than that with it. I've never flaked out or backed out on anything. And he knows that I'm good for it. If I say I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it. And he's super flexible with everything that we do. And just has given me some really amazing deals on some stuff too I've never asked him for a discount on anything. And he's just given me breaks on stuff because I was buying multiple animals or whatever. And even recently when I got these Jimmy Cincta, the first two I got were so amazing. I said, do you have any more of these? And he said, yeah. And he said, I have another pair. And I said, I'll take those too. And when he sent them to me, he said, look, they always have some type of subcutaneous nematodes. And so I expect that, but these had more than average, these little parasites. And he just gave me another one for free, just in case one of the two that I got didn't make it, even though they were in great shape. So that little baby that I showed you, that's a captive bred female. He just gave me that for free and was like, I'm just throwing this in for you in case one of the other ones doesn't make it. Like I'm not telling people like expect Dan to give you deals or give you good shit or give you free shit. But what I'm getting at is the dude, he did that because the snakes he was sending me were slightly imperfect, even though I expected that from wild caught. That's just how the dude operates. So I literally, and he's a big Colubrid guy. If people that watch this show don't follow DM Exotics, I mean, you're just missing out. He's huge on big and oddball Colubrids. His YouTube channel is it's not the only one that I watch every video, but there's only like two that I watch every video. The other one is Gary Scavino, GS Reptiles, but Dan puts out videos like weekly, and every one of them that comes out, I watch it the first chance that I have. So, and it's also super cool. I have animals here in my collection that I watched that animal on a video of his in Indonesia or Malaysia, and now it's sitting here at my house. It's fucking cool, man.
Nice.
So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the black Jansen, I've heard some people, I don't know, assume or like they've had hypothesis that they might be something slightly different than Oxycephalum or Janseni. They might be their own thing, or at least they're from a separate locality, and that might make them divergent enough. What are your thoughts on that based on any research you've done and what you've looked into?
Interestingly, it seems like there's two populations at least of black ones. Interestingly, one of them is Sulawesi, which is where the black mangrove snakes are from as well. So that and the thing that's extremely interesting about that specifically is that, and this is coming from a few different people, but this is an observation that Dan has made in the field. In a lot of areas of Southeast Asia and parts of Indonesia, the Gonyosoma and the Boiga, specifically the mangrove snakes, inhabit the exact same areas. Like you will see oxys and melanota like in the exact same habitat, in the mangrove swamps, in the trees, like in the exact same habitat. So to me, it's very interesting that the black mangrove snakes and the black Janseni come from like one of the localities is shared between the two. And it makes me wonder if there's just something about that environment that drives the selection for that, that color. And for anybody listening, wondering about the care, once they are acclimated or if they're captive bred, you can keep Gonyosoma and mangrove snakes in an identical manner. You can keep them exactly. There is zero difference between their care. The acclimation is the same. The care is the same. You can keep them identically. There's no difference between those two snakes in the way you care for them. It's one of the reasons that I started getting the Janseni, because they just kind of fit seamlessly into what I was doing. And, I haven't had any breeding success yet, but to be fair, I got these animals as sub-adults a year and a half ago, and I only have one pair to try with. So,
Right.
but yeah, I don't know enough about whether or not they're a different species. I don't know how many different localities they exist in. The only thing I can say about the similarity in color is that the black ones actually do have some color on the underside, and it's the same cream tones that you see on one of the other color phases of Janseni, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And to me, they are all so very similar to each other in everything but color. The Janseni seem to be heavier bodied than the Oxycephalum, but
Yeah.
and as a side note, there are Indo and Malaysian Oxycephalum that may end up being different species. But I can't make any comment on whether or not I think there's any legitimacy to the black Janseni being anything other than just a color phase. But who knows? Maybe we can get the North American rat snake guys to go over there and chop that shit up for no apparent reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Just what
I
we need.
really, I've actually never worked with Janseni before these black ones.
Okay.
So and only seen, man, just a handful in person over the years. Most of my experience with them was that Freitas was a good friend of mine back in the day, and we used to talk about him a lot. And I was kind of obsessed. And when he started getting out of them and getting into pythons, I damn near bought a big group of Janseni and a handful of Oxys from him. He had It was going to be an $11,000 deal, just
Oh
to
wow.
give you an idea of how it was. Uh, like a trio of big black and silver Janseni and some classic ones and some younger ones. And it was a mix of captive bred and wild caught adults, and then some captive bred Malaysian and Indo Malaysian cross oxys. I was like a big group of snakes, and we tossed it around a lot, and we just couldn't really. I'm glad I didn't take it on at the time. I wasn't in a position in my life to have a whole
Right.
bunch more big nervous colubrids. It was just something I really wanted to do, and had just enough shred of responsibility to end up not going through with it. Um, but yeah, Freight, he kept all that stuff. He kept them. He didn't do to him. There wasn't a difference with the acclamation or the care from Jansenite to Oxycephalum at all. Not that I recall, anyways, from my conversations with him. So, but yeah, as far as caring for or keeping in my collection, these are the first Janseni that I've ever had. Um,
Nice.
Makes me want to get more though. I absolutely adore them. They're incredible animals.
Yeah. We had a question in the chat. Adam was asking, they don't crossbreed. And I said, which animals? And she said, Boiga. I don't know if she met with the Gonyosoma or with other Boiga species.
And
Um,
they do crossbreed, because there are um, I didn't even realize. I got my laptop over here and I haven't even been looking at the comments in here. Um, there's a hybrid between. It's like a possible natural hybrid, and it's like, I think it's Cyanea and Dendrophila, or Cyanea and Melanota, and they have a
okay.
separate name for them too. I can't remember what they're called. Um, but yeah, Delek is always catching me on my um, Chondro podcasts. She has some of my animals over there in Germany, but I didn't
Nice.
know that she was. I didn't know she was watching this one, so I do it. Um, and she does. We know each other because of chondros, but she does hognose snakes in Germany.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Cool.
but and is coming over here to see us in the States later on this year. So I'm super
Oh, that's
excited
awesome.
about that. Yeah. Yep.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna act a fool over here. Look at lots of snakes, but there's
Nice.
lots of snakes to look at over here. But yeah, I know that Freight crossed the Indo to Malaysian oxys, and if I remember correctly, he also crossed different color phases of the Jansen eye. But he got out of them in like '09 or something. So it's a long time ago. I can't quite remember the like type of results that he was getting with that stuff or any of
So Jared, who I had mentioned before, has crossed the green oxys with the silvers and has gotten a
that.
mix of both in the clutch.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
that. I've seen the green silver cross, and I really dig some of the silvers if they're like really really silver because they're pretty variable. They can be kind of more pale or have kind of more yellowish or more dingy,
Right.
but some of the really really silver ones are just unbelievable snakes. Jordan Russell in
Yeah.
California,
Some of the adults he posts are just insane.
he has been cranking them out over
Oh
there.
yeah.
Eventually, I'll snag a pair from Jordan's a good dude. That's like you say, that's who brought in my original Divergens male, and I like Jordan, and um, he's doing really good with those over there. I just need to figure out. I talked to him about it a little bit, and we're kind of doing the same thing with ours. So I don't know. Maybe my female just needs more time to settle in, feel comfortable to develop some follicles. I haven't seen. The other thing is when you put a colubrid pair together, for the most part, if the female has follicles, this is across the board with virtually every species of colubrid that I've ever kept. The male will start courting her as you're feeding him into the enclosure. Like you'll see their tongue flick will change, and they'll start jerking
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
rubbing their chin on their back and all that, or just go like the Boiga can be very aggressive with the courtship. They will start chasing and grabbing, and the bull snakes do that shit too. And eventually, I think I want to throw my bulls in like some of my bulls in like really big enclosures and watch them just do bull snake stuff. Man, their
Yeah.
behavior is just amazing. Reptilandia posted a video the other day of a female bull snake digging out like a burrow, like pulling rocks out of a hole in the ground with her nose. Fucking
Yeah.
cool, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. And perfect segue there because let's talk about some Pituophis because I know you've been working with bulls for a long time. I know you got some Janai, the Mexican pines.
Yep.
What do you have going on over there? Because just looking through your social medias, you don't post the bulls a whole lot. I knew you bred bulls, but like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
working on in terms of that? Is it more for line bred stuff or what are
So
your kind of projects?
it is both. Everything is Stillwater hypo. All of my bull snakes are Stillwater hypos. I adore Stillwater hypo bull snakes. They are just incredibly beautiful animals to me. And this is you know, I mean, a lot of things are naturally occurring, but there is Stillwater is a city in Oklahoma, and the hypo gene, especially the way they look in the wild, like this one's been selectively bred for color, and so it's a very very pale, very hypo one, and he has kind of an aberrant pattern too with some of the like kind of dashes down his sides there, and lots of orange and just really really pale. But the original Stillwaters, which I love the OG look as well, but they are the original ones are not too far off from what a regular normal bull snake looks like. So it's not like a mutation that's going to get them eaten by a bird in the wild. You know, it's
Right.
like they don't stand out anymore. And bull snakes, even the babies are super tough. You know, an adult bull snake, it could be neon pink and nothing's going to mess with it. You know, they're just really big. Oh, he's trying to eat me.
There we go.
And yeah, that's a first. I've had some of my babies grab onto me and try to eat me, but he this is a little male holdback from 23, and then I have a trio, and he's from what I call my OG female, because I have a female that has the classic look. This guy has the more like lavender tail bands.
Okay.
And we've just been able to selectively breed them to be more and more hypo, and he's just intent on eating my hand. But uh, then I have a flame line female that I got from John Skager, and I've had her up on Instagram. The flame line was started by John Ginter. Anybody that knows anything about bull snake morph history knows who John Ginter is. And John was known for his Kingsville red bull snakes.
Gotcha.
And he took the Kingsville red line and bred it into the Stillwater hypos to bring some red into them. So we call them red influenced or flame line. And currently John Skager works with the flame line, and they this guy right here, man. Are you gonna like let go of my hand eventually? He works with the flame line, and he has some of the best ones I've ever seen. And I have a female from that line that is just ridiculous. Eventually, I kind of want to try to work on refining some of that a little bit, or maybe reintroduce some old Kingsville blood to it. But for right now, every one of my bull snakes is a Stillwater hypo. And I also have a Stillwater hypo white side female, and then an albino Stillwater hypo white side male. So I'm usually not into like the crazy morph combos and stuff, but um, Stillwater hypo white sides are almost black and white, and they are insanely beautiful animals. And then if you introduce Axanthic to that, they're just completely black and white. The albino really washes it out. I don't like my albino male, and he's an asshole. But he came with the female at a really good deal, and I don't think she's had albino. So if she's ready to go. I'm not sure if he's gonna. We'll just see how he behaves when I pull him out of brumation. I went ahead and put him down. But if he will go, they should all be Stillwater hypo white sides and het for albino in that clutch. And I won't be pairing them back to each other because I have zero desire to produce albinos. But like I said, I just got a good deal on him. But
very cool.
This is funny, man. If I let go of me, just coiling me right back up.
Damn.
God, I fed you guys. They're just I just fed them a few days ago. These things just never. If I put them down, they're not old enough. This group, they're not old enough to go down for the winter yet. If I put them down, I don't think we would have this crazy feeding response. But,
yeah, maybe not.
Sitting here, I would understand this if I had been in the rat room or something before, but I had not. I don't want to like try to peel him off of me. He's got all this skin on my knuckles. But anyways, bull snakes, I'll go on a little rant about these things because it's literally the first time I've ever had one try to actually eat me other than a baby. I've had babies chew on my fingers before, but they're, to me, and my friend Dilek in here in Germany, I sent her one of my bulls too. They are just, they're like the perfect pet snake, man. They're like big enough to be impressive, but not so big to be like unmanageable. There's some colubrids like Dry Marcon or something that are like really big, fast, powerful animals with
Oh
that
yeah.
eat an insane amount of food, and they're very messy and amazing as they are. I love indigo snakes and crebos. I'll just never keep them. Um, the bull snakes are perfectly manageable. They don't get huge, and he finally let go of me. We see how terribly damaged I am from this. I think I may need to go to the ER right
Oh
now.
boy.
I'm checking out. He's hissing and everything.
Yeah, usually if anything, I just see the bull snakes like bluff strike at you.
Yeah. Well, this is full feeding response.
Oh
100%.
yeah.
That was all
Yeah.
feeding response. He did the like slow turn, like king snakes will do to you, like the slow turn and grab on. And
Right.
now he's getting all hissy, and I love their just like the mangroves. I love their defensive display. They rattle their tails, they rasp their scales
Yeah.
together, and they stand up and they hiss. A big bull snake will hiss so loud that you can hear it throughout the whole house when they're
Oh
really
yeah.
really pissed
Oh yeah.
off, and
They're loud.
it is super cool to me. Um, and guys, if you get bit by a snake, put some alcohol on it. Just you
Yeah.
know, since we're teaching people about stuff here, I keep spray bottles of rubbing alcohol in basically every room, everywhere. Like there, I have it all over the place. It's not for
Yeah.
bites. Cleaning feeding equipment. I wipe down my phone and spray my doorknobs like common contact points. When you
Right.
have shitloads of animals, you have to do stuff for sterilization and for pathogen management, because there is all kinds of nasty little things that'll come in and wipe your whole collection out if you're doing dumb stuff. But if you have some very basic protocols that you make habits, you can keep everything nice and clean and separated. And if something happens, you can isolate it very easily. Um, I'm gonna have a bruise from that. He chewed on me pretty good. Anyways, um, so yeah, the Stillwater hypo bulls are something that I started breeding those in 2009, and I will just always keep them. I think they're perfect. And one of the things I did with these last two clutches, I breed quite a few things that are very common, like those, and I do it just because I absolutely love the snakes. I don't
Yeah.
keep none of my stuff as money projects. Like every single species of snake that I keep, I have zero ball pythons over here. Like, so I don't have a problem with people breeding ball pythons, and I have a lot of friends that do that as like for like a baseline income to like fund other snake projects and stuff. I'm on board with all that. I love ball pythons, but they don't do it for me. So I'm not going to keep them and breed them just for the
Oh
money.
yeah.
Every species I keep, I adore. My bull snakes are some of my favorite snakes. If I'm showing kids a snake, if I want like an ambassador snake that's an ambassador for snakes, I don't want to pull out a little tiny baby corn snake or something like that. I'm going to pull out
Right.
one of my bull snakes because it's big and impressive. It's big enough where if somebody is scared of snakes, it's a snake that's big enough that they should be scared of that one. And then I can show them how harmless and sweet that animal is. They're just the perfect
Right.
like ambassador snake, and they're bulletproof. I mean, how many times have you seen a dead bull snake in your life?
I haven't seen any.
That's what I'm saying, dude. They just don't
Yeah,
die.
yeah. No, they're good. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the staying on the pit subject, I now have 3.3 Jani. With the bulls, I've got my trio. I got a pair of Stillwaters, the flame line Stillwater female, and then that pair of white sides that I was telling you about, and then quite a few holdbacks from last year and the year before.
Nice.
This girl's, I've been interested in Janai for a really long time. And I finally
They're
got
so
one
cool.
from my dear friend Stephen Cush.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Steven has a pair of adults that are fucking spectacular, dude. They are just, oh my God, they're unbelievable. And I got this girl from him. last year, and she doesn't want to sit still. She's just coloring up. She's going to look like her parents. Her neck is really, really orange.
Yep.
And these colors, man, these like rich, beautiful brown tones that almost have like almost a hint of like a purpley look to them.
Yep.
And it like I just fell in love with the snake, and so now I have 3 pairs of them. And
Nice.
from different people, I just picked up the last one from local friend of mine, Greg Power at Dine Animal. He's also the manager at VFW Reptarium. Got a little male that he produced from unreal parents that are from the Vivid line. Any old school colubrid enthusiasts in the States know about Vivid Reptiles. That's where my favorite bloodline of Baird's rat snakes, and we can talk about the Bairds too.
Yeah.
But the Jani are pine snakes are all just like bull snakes. It's a trip to me that they moved bulls from being a subspecies of pines to being a subspecies of gopher snakes, when with the exception of Sonoran gophers, none of the gophers are anything like a bull snake at all. You can put a bull snake, you can blindfold somebody and put a bull snake and a northern pine snake in their hands, and they can't tell the difference between that snake. But like
Right.
a vertebralis, a Cape gopher,
Yep. Very different.
or a San Diego gopher, totally different snake from a bull snake.
Yep.
But yeah, I also got a pair or a female from Scott Crumbly at Tinley, and had one of my friends drive it back to Texas for me. Also at Tinley, I got a male of unknown origin from Josh Alder. Josh and his wife are good friends of mine, awesome people. Josh gets lots of really high quality captive bred stuff to sell at the shows.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff. And the Baird's rat snake I'm going to show you also came from Josh, and no background information on her, but she's my best Bears. And I don't like the locality information is cool to me, but the reason it's important to me is because I know that there's certain looks in certain areas, and the phenotype is what I'm going for. I'm not like
Right.
real hardcore about, I have buddies that breed rattlesnakes, and if they weren't collected on the same hill, they won't put them in a cage together. Like no joke, they're like that hardcore about it. Like even if they're from
Right.
the same mountain range, if they weren't from the same like peak of that mountain range, they won't pair them up.
Damn.
Which is, and that's super cool. Like I'm not criticizing that at all. I think it's fucking incredible. I just don't care that much about it. It's a phenotype thing for me.
Right. Right.
But yeah, and I also yeah, like you said, I got the female from Scott came from parents that have white ground color, like really,
Oh,
really
really?
white ground color. Yeah, dude, they're super, super cool. And then the male that I got from Josh is the same age as this female. He's a little smaller, but he's starting to color up very similar to her. So they're going to be a perfect match. And that'll be my first Jansenite pairing when they're ready to go. And
Very nice.
then I got one more pair from the same breeder, but they were from um, two different pairings of hers, two different bloodlines. So got some nice diversity. I may not keep all 6 of them. I want to raise them up and see what they turn into.
Turn out.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe I keep them in all of them and breed them. Maybe I don't. Um, do you have any questions about the bulls or the Pituophis in general? Before we
Um.
move on to anything else?
No. No. You're free to go to the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then I'll make just one last note. Like, if I didn't already make this point, everybody needs bull snakes. Go get bull snakes. If you don't already have bull snakes, like everybody who's ever kept bull snakes probably still has bull snakes. They're just the most amazing snakes. Go get a bull snake. Get one from me. Yeah, I actually have a couple available right now. Now that I think about it, but I don't get one from me. Get one from somebody else. get a morph, get a locality, whatever, get bull snakes. Last 2 years in a row, I've hatched out all these bulls, and I got a bad taste in my mouth about selling some of my common stuff to flippers. Um, I had sold just a few different animals, and like to a few different guys, and I like knowing where my snakes are going. And sometimes that's not always possible, and sometimes I do have to sell stuff to guys that are reselling. But going to a reptile show and selling some stuff to a flipper, and then going to that show 6 months later and seeing those animals and they're still the same size, that really fucking bums me out. That really put a bad taste in my mouth. And so I will never post publicly animals at wholesale prices because it's not ethical. It's not good for the market. I hate calling it that. I rarely post stuff for sale anyways. But what I do is if I got stuff that I want to wholesale, the first thing I'm going to do is reach out to my friends and offer them animals at a series that the homeboy hookup, the friends and family discount, because then I can still get that same amount of money. Takes me a little bit of extra time because I got to box it up individually and send it to them or whatever. But then I put these animals that I love in my friends' hands. Year before last, I did it with my bulls. Last year, I did it with Okatee corns and bulls. I sold so many corn snakes and bull snakes to my chondro breeder friends, and they're loving the snakes. And I sold a bunch of bulls to guys that had never kept bull snakes before, and these guys have crazy high-end chondro collections.
Yeah.
And they're like sending me pictures and telling me how much they love their bull snakes. And my buddy Brian Fisher, really, really dear friend of mine, he's Front Range Arboreals, and he's got a bunch of badass chondros and Bolin's pythons and halmaheras and all this super. He's got breeding Europlatus geckos and all kinds of cool shit.
Okay.
And he sent me pictures the other day of his twins, little bitty kids, holding a corn snake and two of the bulls that I sent over there, and it just what that does for my heart, man, to see his kids over there with those snakes. Yeah, and so it's just like I love that type of stuff, man. I love, and I'll all day long, take less money and spend more time getting those animals to places that even with the simple stuff, even with these common species, because to me that like we're all in this for the snakes, but to me it's it's the community and the sharing and the podcast and the conversations and the teaching and the friends that I make in the community. That's what it's like. That's really what it's all about for me.
100%.
So yeah, get bull snakes and it'll make your life better. This is the Baird's rat snake that I got from Josh Alder, and of all of these snakes, for a second I thought she was just going to bite me right where the bull snake had me. This, of all of the snakes that I've shown, this is the one that's going to be hardest to show the color.
I think the closer you get, the better it's actually showing. So it's showing like that.
So you can see the kind of baseline color, but you can't pick up the iridescence and the subtlety to this snake. So she's silver with all the red undertones, but that purpley look, she doesn't look like that to my eyes in this room, but outside they get a purple sheen to them, and it's not just iridescence. It's the combination of the silver and the underlying red that kind of makes them look overall purple. So she's got this orange belly and then orange ground color and then the silver. And in my opinion, these things are highly variable, and they can be just ugly, dude. They can be just a grayish brown, super plain snake. But in my opinion, a really, really nice Val Verde County area, like Loma Alta, that area, Texas Baird's rat snake is the most attractive colubrid in the United States. I don't think there is anything else in the U.S. that's more attractive. Even overall, like North American colubrids, for me, it is Baird's rat snakes, Okatee corn snakes, Mexican pines, and Cape gophers, vertebralis.
Yeah.
So just really, really incredible. And Stephen Cush just got an exceptional pair from Josh Alder. I don't know if I'm supposed to be telling people that or not, but he did. I usually don't share other people's information if they haven't, like, I don't know if he's posted them publicly yet. So sorry, Stephen, if I like unveiled your new pair
He's been on the
for
show.
you.
It's all right. He'll have to come
Yeah,
back
yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can. He'll definitely do it, man. There's of all the people that I know that love talking about snakes.
Oh yeah.
Steven is a very, very dear friend of mine, and I was on the phone with him for quite a while this week, twice, and he is my favorite geek. He is so hardcore
Oh
as a
yeah.
snake nerd, dude. I fucking love it, man. I love it. Um, the last thing for show and tell, I think this is cool that I'm saving this one for last. Um, this is one of my male Okatee corns,
Nice.
and he is the classic. I wouldn't call this classic wild type because this boldness of black has been kind of selectively bred for, but that's the classic captive line Okatee look. He's a
Yep.
pretty decent sized boy too. He sired a clutch or two for me last year. I can't remember. I think he sired two of my three clutches last year. He
Very
is in
nice.
brumation, and he is just like, having pulled him out of brumation. It's warmer in this room. He is just really curious right now. He's like, "What is going on?" Um, but yeah, I mean, come on, dude. Like, if you had never
Yeah.
seen one of these before, it would blow your fucking mind. You
No,
know,
a good Okatee is hard to beat.
I agree. You can't say it better than that. I
Yeah.
really truly feel that it is. There are not many snakes that are more beautiful than just a really awesome Okatee corn. I have like I think I have like 10 adults or something like that. It's a
Nice.
nice little group, and they're just all normal Oketees, and I have them all the way from their um, I have Sherman and Abbott bloodlines,
Okay.
and then so they're like old school lines, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I have them mixed up, and I'm crossing them. I'm not even keeping track. I can't even remember which one is which, and but I have them ranging all the way from super bold black. I even have a couple that are more bold in the black than he has. I have some with kind of aberrant patterns. I like the kind of zigzagging and stuff. Some people like really like perfect patterns. I have them both ways.
Right.
I have them ranging in color all the way to the wild type look, to what they actually look like, you know, if you go collect them out there in the Carolinas. And the I also have a line that was gifted to me by Terry Vandeventer, and he collected the founder stock um, in, I want to say like in the 60s, maybe. I think
Okay.
he said he collected in the 60s. I need to write down this information from him that he gave me. He collected it in the 60s, and it is legit Okatee Hunt Club blood. And the only blood that he has introduced to this bloodline were from guys like Howie Sherman and a couple of his friends, where he knew that they collected them in that area. So these are legitimate. They're not Focatees, as some people like to call them. Rob Christian took to calling his Oketees Focatees because somebody called him out on them not being real Oketees or whatever, and so he just always calls his Focatees now, which is hilarious to me. But and I again, I'm about the phenotype. I don't really give a shit. But
Yeah.
for Terry to gift me a pair of these things and tell me got on the phone with me and told me the history of this line. And I don't know if y'all, anybody listening, knows who Terry Vandeventer is, or knows who Bill Lamar is. Bill Lamar is, these guys are just legendary reptile keepers, and Bill Lamar owned Green Tracks. It was the first like reptile ecotourism company back in the early '90s. Bill's been out to my house a couple times, and Terry dropped off those corns to him, and he brought them to me. And to hear that history from Terry on that line of just pure Okeetees that has never been diluted with anything other than more wild caught Okeetees is fucking cool, man. It's super cool that I have that pure line that's been in captivity since 20 some odd, like 20 years before I was born or whatever. And I'm 44.
Yeah, damn. All right, man. Oh, we did have a question. Do you have or have you kept any Pituophis, Carinata, or Mucosa?
I actually do not have any. And I have only had the pleasure of temporarily housing some Carinata for Stephen Cush, actually. Stephen came in to town, and he came over to my house. This was in 2021. Came over to my house. This is before I had the snake house. I was just on this one side, but him and Des came over, and we checked out some stuff, played with some scrubs and chondros and mangrove snakes. I think I got both of them kind of hooked on mangrove snakes. But he bought a bunch of spilotes and Pituophis and a bunch of montane rattlesnakes when he was in town for an ARBC, and I housed all that stuff for them and shipped it all for them. And it was the tote. We did Delta and because of the rattlesnakes and just shipped everything. The tote was the biggest size they make of those black and yellow, the yellow lid black totes from Home Depot. I could have slept in this tub, and like it was literally that big, and it was chock full of Carinata and Spilotes and rattlesnakes, and one of the Carinata was 11 feet long.
Damn.
He was an absolute. I've seen some huge colubrids in my life, man. I used to have a 10-foot sulphureus. I used to have a 9-foot pilatus. And this thing was. I should have sent you some pictures of that beforehand, so you pop it up on the screen. I never posted it on Instagram other than in my story. I have a picture of my employer, who's one of my best friends, holding this thing, and Mike is 6'4", and this snake, like like any size human, you put the snake on, and you're just like, whoa, dude. Steven is what 6'4", 6'5", or something like that too. And I've got pictures of him and Mike holding the snake, and it just insane how fucking big this thing was. And they're different, man. They're like very clearly very intelligent snakes. Super cool to interact with that thing. My buddy Don came over, Don Champlin. He's a pro photographer. Don's Reptiles on Instagram. A significant percentage of the stuff that's on his Instagram are animals he photographed in my collection. And he came over, and we got amazing shots of some of those rattlesnakes and the spilotes, and a few shots of those Carinata. They don't like to sit still, but dude, what a cool snake, man! What a cool snake. I understand. Dan is obsessed with them. I totally get it. I feel like I would keep them if I could give them 20-foot long enclosures or big outdoor pens or something. Somebody's rattling at me over here. I can't. Oh yeah, it's this. That's the Jan eye. Pissed off that I stuffed her back in that tub. I'm trying to think if I've got any other. Most of this room is vipers and boids. There's just a couple of mangroves. Yeah, I don't have any other colubrids in here right now. I was trying to think if I had anything else cool that I could break out, but I think I've given you a sampling of everything.
No, you definitely have. 100%.
Yeah, that's all the colubrids that I keep. I have Okatee corn snakes, Texas Baird's rat snakes, Janai, Stillwater hypo bulls, the Jansen eye, and then the three mangrove types. That's all the colubrids that I keep.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Before we get into the wrap up questions, and honestly,
Sure.
I'd go into more talking about your conjures and stuff if I didn't feel terrible. But I had one question for one of my Patreon members.
Okay.
And he has, and this might be a loaded question. He asked, why do you think we get so many imported chondros rather than like captive, or like why do you think chondros are still imported as much as they are?
Because there's a demand. That's always the simple answer. Because there's a demand, and I'm guilty of being part of that demand. I in breeding the shit out of green tree pythons, I am making that lowers the demand for wild caught. But I still buy imported green trees. I was talking to somebody about it today. I got a friend bringing in
Right.
a whole bunch of them, and some of them are wild caught, and some of them are farm bred. And all of them are labeled to fit through the loophole as farm bred animals. They all come in as farm bred. Um, but 100% it's for the demand. And for me personally, for most people, it's just the cost. But really, if you're not real good at acclimating stuff, the amount of money that you spend on animals that die and vet bills and stuff like that, it just ends up being more cost effective to buy lower end captive bred stuff than it does to
Right,
buy
right.
a bunch of imports. That's true of a lot of stuff. Um, but uh, they as long as there is a demand, and as long as, and even if it becomes completely illegal to bring them in, there will, that'll just increase the demand for wild caught. And that happens with literally any product of anything. Like you make it illegal, and now it's really valuable. Um, but the first of all, this has been looked at pretty extensively. The collection of chondros, it seems to be pretty sustainable. They're like extremely common in the wild, like
Right.
unbelievably common in the wild. Um, there's some suggestion that there's some insular populations that maybe have been um, depleted to a noticeable degree, potentially by collection, but it is also the deforestation factor in pretty much any of these places that we're talking about. But yeah, as long as people will buy them, they'll make their way into the country. And I still buy wild caughts for two reasons. They say most people it's just a money thing. I buy them three reasons. One, it's because they tend to be cheaper. But two, there are certain looks that I'm going for, and I want to have animals that I'm not really hard up on the like very specific locality stuff, but I want wild caught animals from a certain subspecies to know that my founder stock has not been diluted with it by crossing to the other subspecies. And when you cross, like, this is especially true of like if you're crossing like mainland northern to mainland northern subspecies, like the breeding poultry to Utariensis, so like crossing a Sorong to a Jaya or whatever, it can be pretty hard to tell in some of the resulting offspring that they've been crossed out because they're fairly similar. And because captive bred to wild caught, the look changes a whole lot anyways. Which brings me to the next reason that I like getting imports is simply as a collector. Green tree pythons, for the most part, change significantly in the first generation. A lot of reptiles are like that. The captive bred ones just do not look like the wild caught ones. This is especially
Right.
true of green tree pythons. I can look at an adult green tree python and like 96 times out of 100 just tell you whether or not it was raised in captivity or in the wild, just based
Okay.
on the color and the scalation and the head shape and all of that. And so there are certain looks that come out of the wild that we do not see in captive bred animals. And
Interesting.
and those are some of my favorite looks. So yeah, very selfishly, but those reasons, but admitting a selfish reason is better than making up some bullshit around your selfish reason and
Yeah,
making an
yeah.
excuse for it. And just like all these tubs that I have, I'm a tub
No,
warrior
and
because it's the easiest thing to do.
yeah, and I don't think the question was proposed in like importing as a negative thing. I think more so
No,
just
no,
a
for
curiosity
sure.
of
Yeah, no,
yeah,
for sure. And I don't think it's a negative thing. I'm just kind of I'm like keeping the conversation on both sides of that
right.
argument, you know. And yeah, I'm no, definitely I didn't take it that way at all. I just like to present both sides of that because some people do think it's a negative thing and some people don't. And you know, and to be honest, like everything about snake keeping is a selfish thing. So and
Yeah.
also like that's one of the reasons I think like the deep arguments about how these things should be kept. A lot of it is so silly to be on a high horse about your bioactive shit or whatever because everybody's I've said this so many times, everybody is just we're just keeping snakes in boxes and some people have bigger prettier boxes or whatever,
Yeah.
and the degrees to which these things matter to the snakes or their health varies drastically and a lot of it's way overstated. But you know, if you're keeping animals at all as captives, you don't really have a whole lot to stand on about like the ethics of other methods of keeping stuff as captives as
Oh,
long as if the animals are healthy.
100.
It's we all have a responsibility to maintain ethical practices regarding the health and well-being of the animals, but like to act like you're only about the animal's well-being, that's the only thing that you care about and that's the number one priority. If that was the case, you wouldn't have them stuffed into boxes in your house, you wouldn't have jungle dragons in a box in your bedroom. So and but if I had the financial resources to spend all of my time observing snakes in the wild and just traveling and looking at chondros on branches in Papua, I would not keep any snakes in captivity. I just,
Okay.
I would literally, I could let go of every single animal that I keep. Period. If I knew that I could just spend all my time looking at them in their habitats rather than looking at them in my boxes, no question.
All right. Very cool. All right, so that's a good segue to our kind of wrap up questions here.
All right.
First one I usually go with is what's a you've been doing this for a very long time, as you said. What's a
Mm-hmm.
big motivator for what keeps you going with the reptiles in general and keeps really that fire burning?
That's a great question, and I I don't have a great answer. I could give kind of like there's some really complicated answers to that because I do sometimes feel I don't know if burnout is the right word for it because I never tell myself fuck like I don't want to do this shit as a general, but I do often come home and I'm like I just want to like veg out. I don't want to feed snakes tonight type of thing.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
it's because I work a full-time job as well, and
right.
also I have my my physical practices. I beat myself up in the gym pretty much every day as well, and sometimes I'm just tired and don't give a fuck when I get home and don't want to feed snakes. And fortunately, they're not dogs, and if you want to feed them the next day, it's totally
Yeah,
fine. And a lot of people's snakes could probably use miss a couple of meals, but including a few of mine. But it is um, it has just been a lifelong fascination of mine, and I just don't really have a need um, for motivation. It's just kind of there. Somebody asked me that about working out just a couple days ago. He asked me how I keep my motivation for working out. I I don't. I got my motivation years ago. I don't need
Right.
motivation now. I had motivation and I used discipline and repetition to turn it into a habit and an identity. I
Yeah,
just
it's just
am
you know,
the person. Yeah, it's just if I like get too busy and miss a day of some type of physical practice, I don't go hard every day. That's stupid. But I try to work out every day. But I like periodize and undulate my intensity and the things that I'm doing
yeah,
based on my recovery levels. But I love my physical practices, whether I am swinging a mace. You are just too loud, dude. I don't know if you can hear that or not. That snake is like really going hardcore with the rattling. Or just whether it's just playing around and doing skill work, or whether I'm lifting heavy, or whether I'm at the gym in my living room or the gym that I have a membership at. It's just part of what I do, and I absolutely love it. And it's the same thing with the snake stuff. Yeah, it's a chore, dude. I take it like I have help, but Zach is over here maybe once a week for a couple hours cleaning out rats and scrubbing stacks of dirty tubs for me and stuff like that. And I pay him well, and I'm super grateful for it because he's doing things that I just um, I don't ever want to pay somebody to care for my animals.
right.
I'm paying somebody to do the things that are like tedious stuff that doesn't bring me joy. I love feeding my snakes and caring for them. I love putting eyes on every animal that I have damn near every day. And it it's kind of hard to lose the motivation when you have this many incredible animals. I mean, I can turn my head in any direction in this room right now without moving without moving my head, just my eyes. I can see, I've got Wagler's vipers and Bornean keeled vipers and broad banded pit vipers and Amazon tree boas and eyelash vipers and lots of green tree pythons and Jamaican boas and I don't know the common name, but Punaceus, the Craspedocephalus punaceus. Um, and my Parias McGregori are over here, like all like, just where I can move my eyes and see in this little corner. I have all these species of snakes, and it's hard to like not. It's hard to get burned out when you have the variety like that.
Right.
And I was having a discussion with Gary Scavino about this a while back. I've known Gary for a very long time. He's a very good friend of mine. And we were talking about how some of us are just lifers. It's just, that's just who we are and what it is. And I don't, it will always be a part of what I do, some way, shape, or form. Like it will just always be what it is.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. That's a good answer. Um, cool. And what would you say in the next, let's say, like 3 to 5 years? What does the future hold for you in terms of reptiles, the collection, what your plans are? What would you say?
Lots, a lot more bigger, better caging.
Okay.
Like my snake house is even this room, like all of this stuff. Um, like this room's fairly uniform with who I've gotten racks from and stuff, but there's a couple different brands in here. Am I have focus cubed habitats building me a bunch of cages right now that are kind of a custom job. I want to have uniformity and big, awesome cages, as big of cages as I can fit for the species that I'm keeping, and uniformity. And that's for two reasons. Number one, it looks really badass, and I want to make more videos over here. I want to be able to show off my collection and not feel shitty about all my mix match bullshit that's over in the snake house. And I just because which is a segue into the other thing about why I'm doing it. When it looks really nice and you have a lot of uniformity, it makes being in the space much more enjoyable and maintenance much more easy and seamless, which means I'm much more likely to be in there seeing the animals, seeing their behavior, and staying on top of the maintenance. And healthier, more visible animals make more babies. Like when you can observe their behavior more often, more closely, especially with all these weird finicky animals that are difficult to breed that I keep. That's the stuff that I love, is all the pain in the ass stuff. When I'm able to have more uniformity in their care, the more variables you can control for, the easier it is to see when things are going right, when things are going wrong, and the better numbers I'm going to have as far as reproductive success, which is what drives all of this. I breed snakes to pay for more snakes and keep this whole thing going. And I plan to continue adding species, not just to my list of what I have produced, but I hope for more like US firsts. And I tied for a world's first last year with the Tropidolaemus laticinctus, which it turns out looks like they're actually just a color phase of subannulatus and not actually a separate species as they're described. But I thought I was the world's first, and turns out a guy in China pulled it off on the exact same day as me.
Oh,
maybe
wow.
maybe beat me by a few hours. I haven't had the heart to check into the exact time on it, but we both had litters born on the same day, and I had a guy in Indonesia make a claim that his friends had bred them, and when I asked for any kind of, they've had wild caught females they collected drop babies. No evidence that they actually bred the species in captivity.
Right.
So yeah, I plan on adding more stuff like that. I have some vipers and some stuff that I'm working with that nobody over here has bred before. So
Very cool.
and then just refining the colubrids that I'm working with. I have really, really exceptional lines of all the colubrids that I have, and I just have a lot of fun playing with that stuff and trying to turn them into the most. I just want to produce the most exceptional examples possible of the animals that I have. I think my male Divergens is just one of the best ones that's ever existed, and I want to just play that up. And that's always my thing, is I want to have just the most exceptional examples of the species that I keep.
Hell yeah. Awesome, man. All right. My last and final one,
Okay.
going back to the Colubrids. So I'd say your general audience is Python mostly audience. But what is your elevator pitch essentially for like why Colubrids? Whether it's a first time Colubrid keeper, or like they've never kept one before, they're currently a Python keeper, or they're just getting into reptiles. Why Colubrids?
That's a great question. So for I'm going to separate this kind of into two different groups. When we're talking about North American colubrids, the corn snakes, the pits, all that stuff, these are animals that are essentially bulletproof. They are super, super easy to keep, super easy to breed. And my green tree python friends, we call them sanity snakes because we're always bashing our heads against the wall with the chondros. And like it just, I could just tell you horror stories about chondros all day long. But with the colubrids, it's like, I know that all of these bulls and corns and bears rats that I have in brumation right now, here in April, I'm going to put them together and they're going to lock up immediately, and they're going to lay fertile eggs a few weeks later, and those eggs are going to hatch and the babies are going to eat and they're going to sell. And, and while they're breeding and all cranking out eggs, I'll be saying, God damn, I need more colubrids. This is so easy. And then when all those eggs start hatching and I have shitloads of babies, I'm going to go, God damn, why did I breed so many colubrids this year?
Yeah.
And so they're so easy, and the simplicity makes it very fun, but also for people who don't have a lot of animals and can afford to do this both with space and financially, I encourage anybody to get a very, very basic colubrid like a bull snake or a corn snake and put it in a big badass bioactive display cage like in your fucking living room or something, right? And seeing a corn snake like perching and basking or like hunting like an arboreal python or whatever, or seeing a bull snake cruise around and burrow and dig stuff up and fuck up their cage, it is super cool. On the and also if you want something that you can handle, like my bull snakes are literally my favorite snakes to put my hands on. Period. And but then on the other side of this is the all the other stuff, the gonyos and the boiga. These are very intelligent, very active animals that have really interesting behaviors if you can get them acclimated well enough and set up properly to exhibit these behaviors. They're super interesting animals. Their attitudes are awesome. I love it when my snakes are trying to kill me. And um, and, and I have a handful of snakes over here that could hit my delete button if I made the wrong mistake. So,
Oh yeah.
um, but with the Boiga and the Gonyosoma with Spilotes, I don't currently have any Spilotes, but I love Spilotes. They're, all the Colubrids I keep are active animals, but those animals, they have such interesting behaviors and they are a little more challenging. So if you want to have the um, the exotic factor going on and the bit of a challenge versus the North American colubrids that are super easy, but also have a big, intelligent, active animal that can potentially make a really cool display. That's the pitch on the Asian colubrids and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
So maybe not as hardy or as easy, but I like having both. I love the challenge and I love the easy stuff, and they go hand in hand. They offset each other and create a lovely balance and contrast in the work that I do.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Well, awesome. So this was a fantastic episode, Patrick. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
info filled episode. And again, I apologize for my lack of being able to talk very well and a lot of
It's all right.
coughing. Hope I was able to guide you through it the right way. But
yeah. I mean, I think everybody knows at this point that you just have to poke a couple questions here and there, and I just won't shut up.
No, it's all good. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's a
Yeah.
great episode. What do you have to say to anyone who watched and who will be watching or listening later?
Well, to you, thanks for having me on, and I always like talking about snakes. And to everybody who's watching, it still boggles my mind that people actually take the time out of their day to sit around and listen to me talk about snakes. Like, it's still really weird to me. As many podcasts as I've done, I've been like, every time I do a podcast, people will reach out and like they'll message me about it, and it just, I'm like, oh, like you actually like listen, like you listen to that. Awesome. It's super awesome that people want to hear me talk about snakes, and I love all of you guys. I love the community, and people who complain about the community are paying attention to the wrong aspects of it. Period. And
Yeah, 100%.
so thanks to the homies in the comments, that are people usually over in the arboreal shows listening to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it. I love all you guys. I love the community, and I really appreciate everybody that asks me questions, and everybody that buys snakes from me, and everybody that takes the time out of their day to listen to me talk about this stuff. It's really awesome. And you asked me that question about what motivates me. All of my answers were about the snakes. There's a totally other, like a different side to that. And it's all the things that I just said. All of that is super motivating to me. When I'm at an expo and I'm talking to my friends or meeting new friends or just standing in a circle, shooting a shit, talking about snakes or everybody looking at one animal, all of that, that's my groove, man. I feel more normal and at home and alive and comfortable doing that than anything else that I do.
Hell yeah. That's awesome, man. All right. Well, I have the link to your Instagram in the description. So anyone who's not following Patrick already, make sure you go give him a follow. Thanks again.
Check me out.
Yeah. Thanks again. I'm going to throw you in the backstage. We'll talk for a couple minutes after I wrap this
up. All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys, what another great episode of the Colubrid Corruption podcast. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Again, guys, I'm sorry for my terrible voice and just overall not feeling good, but it is what it is. We got through it. Make sure you hit a like and subscribe on today's video. Leave a comment. Let us know what you liked about the show. Make sure you go listen to us on all the major audio podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review. Do what you got to do there. Make sure to click the first link and join the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. Support the show. Cool way to join a Colubrid community. And yeah, that's about it. So this was episode number 54 of the Colubrid Corruption podcast with Patrick Holmes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.